Siren Head is easily the most recognizable creature Trevor Henderson ever created, but most people get the horror completely wrong. It's not a monster that chases you down, it's a monster that makes you chase it. So today, we're breaking down the victims of every major Trevor Henderson creature and exactly how they meet their end, starting with the one that weaponizes your own brain against you, Siren Head. Here's the thing about Siren Head's victims: they don't run away, they walk directly toward it every single time. Siren Head is a 40-foot skeletal humanoid with 2 sirens fused where its head should be, and those sirens can produce literally anything: emergency alerts, music, human voices, specifically familiar human voices, the kind that make you stop and say, wait, did you hear that? That's the trap. The typical victim is a hiker already deep in remote wilderness. They hear what sounds like a rescue signal, and every survival instinct tells them to follow it, so they do. But every step toward the sound takes them further from the trail, further from cell service, further from anyone who could help. The creature adapts in real time, always staying just far enough ahead to keep them moving. Their own logic becomes the leash. The real horror isn't the moment Siren Head reveals itself, it's realizing your decision making was compromised for hours. You followed every sound, you made every choice, and none of it was yours. But if you think a creature that hijacks your survival instincts is unsettling, wait until you meet the thing hiding in abandoned shopping malls. Cartoon Cat. Cartoon Cat looks like something a 5-year-old would draw if that 5-year-old hated you personally. It's a towering feline with impossibly long limbs, a grin that stretches way too wide, and an overall aesthetic that screams children's cartoon while simultaneously screaming run. And it lives in abandoned shopping malls, which is, not ideal. Its victims are almost exclusively urban explorers, people who willingly walk into decaying commercial spaces armed with cameras and flashlights. Here's the thing about urban explorers though, they stop constantly. Every interesting wall, every collapsed ceiling gets photographed. The very compulsion that makes them explorers is exactly what gets them killed. Each pause to frame a shot is another window for something with 9-foot limbs to close the distance. There's also something deeply wrong about the setting itself. A shopping mall was built for leisure, designed so humans could wander comfortably and feel safe. Cartoon Cat turns that entire purpose inside out. The food court isn't a food court anymore. It's a kill box with great lighting. The fan debate is interesting. Some think it specifically targets explorers, recognizing the cameras and curiosity. Others argue it's pure territorial instinct. You entered the mall, that's enough. Personally, the territorial explanation is scarier. Intelligence you can outsmart. Instinct doesn't negotiate. But if you think an abandoned mall is a bad place to encounter something horrible, wait until you hear about what's hiding inside the infrastructure you drive over every single day. Bridge worm. You don't have to go looking for this one. That's the whole point. Bridge worm doesn't lurk in some abandoned facility or haunt a forest nobody visits. It lives inside bridges, highway bridges, the ones you cross every single morning on your way to work. The victims here aren't explorers or thrill seekers. They're commuters, regular people in regular cars doing the most boring thing a human being can do, which is sitting in traffic on a Tuesday. And that's exactly what makes Bridge Worm one of the most unsettling creatures in Henderson's entire lineup. Here's the thing about bridges. Once your car is on one, you're committed. There's no turning around, no pulling off to the shoulder, no alternate route. You are funneled into a narrow corridor with concrete walls on both sides and nowhere to go but forward. Bridge Worm knows this. It specifically inhabits the one type of structure where humans have zero ability to deviate from their path. And the worst part? We built these choke points ourselves. Every highway system depends on humans following predictable patterns at predictable times. That predictability is what makes infrastructure work. It's also what makes you a target, but at least Bridgeworm stays in one place. The next creature doesn't have that limitation, and honestly, it might be even stranger. No spum, Long Horse. Every creature we've covered so far has a body count. Long Horse doesn't, and that's exactly what makes it one of the most unsettling things Henderson ever created. Long Horse is exactly what it sounds like. A horse head attached to a neck that just keeps going, bending around corners, looping through doorways, stretching way beyond anything that should exist on a living creature. But here's the thing, it doesn't attack anyone. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't even seem hostile. It just shows up before something terrible happens to you. People who spot this impossible neck coiling through an alley or past a window shortly after experience catastrophe, car accident, house fire, loss of a loved one. Long Horse doesn't cause any of it. It just disappears beforehand, like a cosmic heads up that your life is about to fall apart. Which raises the one question the community has been arguing about for years. Does seeing Longhorse trigger the tragedy, or were you always doomed and Longhorse simply confirmed it? One version means the creature is a curse. The other means it's a warning from something that, in its own horrifying way, might actually be trying to help. Henderson never clarified. The canonical material is a handful of images and brief text. No elaborate victim stories, no confirmed mechanics, just an omen with no instruction manual. But if a creature with 0 kills can still haunt your nightmares, wait until you meet one that shows up specifically because you're already suffering. The man with the upside down face. Most monsters create victims. This one shops for them pre-made. The man with the upside down face doesn't hunt. It doesn't chase. It doesn't need to. Instead, it gravitates toward people who are already destroyed, the recently bereaved, the suicidal, the catastrophically injured, people at their absolute lowest psychological state. It shows up like a vulture circling something that hasn't finished dying yet, and that's what makes it so uniquely horrible. Every other creature on this list actively does something to its victims. Siren Head lures them, Cartoon Cat hunts them, but this thing, it just arrives. You're already suffering, and then you look up and there it is, watching, which, really adds to the healing process. Here's the question nobody can answer. Does it make things worse, or does it just observe? Because there's a massive difference between a creature that deepens your tragedy and one that simply exists near it. One is a demon, the other is a cosmic weather pattern that happens to look terrifying. Some fans interpret it as grief itself given physical form. The idea that human suffering can become so concentrated, so overwhelming, that it literally manifests as something visible. Your pain gets so loud, the universe gives it a face. An upside down one, apparently. But if emotional devastation attracts singular horrors, wait until you see what happens when terror hits an entire city at once. The breaking news. Every creature we've talked about so far has one thing in common. You can run. Maybe not successfully, maybe not for long, but the option exists. The breaking news takes that off the table entirely. This thing doesn't chase you down a hallway or lurk under a bridge. It manifests through broadcast media, television, radio, emergency alert systems. One moment you're watching a normal news broadcast, and the next something is very, very wrong with what's on your screen. And it's not just your screen, it's everyone's screen, simultaneously. That's the scale jump. We've gone from isolated hikers and curious explorers to entire urban populations becoming victims at once. You can't outrun a signal that's already inside every building, every car radio, every phone notification. The threat travels at the speed of information. Here's where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. The breaking news collapses informational certainty at exactly the moment when reliable information matters most. A city experiencing something catastrophic needs its broadcast systems to coordinate a response. But the broadcast system is the threat. You need the news to know what's happening, but the news is what's happening to you. It's a perfect paradox. The fan community splits on what it actually is. Some interpret it as an external entity hijacking broadcast networks as a communication vector, basically using your infrastructure as a megaphone. Others propose something worse, that it's an emergent consciousness born from information infrastructure itself, not something using the system, something the system became. But at least the breaking news operates through technology. The next one doesn't need a screen, a signal, or a broadcast tower. It just needs a highway, god of roadkill. Every single person who has ever driven a car has seen roadkill. You've seen it. That flattened shape on the shoulder, the dark smear across the lane. You looked at it for maybe half a second, felt nothing, and kept driving. Multiply that by every driver on every highway every single day for decades. That's a lot of death that nobody thinks about. The god of roadkill thinks about it. This entity manifests from, or is drawn to, the accumulated remains of animals struck and killed by vehicles along highways. Not one dead raccoon, not 10. The collective, ongoing, never-ending mass of animal death that modern roads produce as a basic cost of existing. And here's where the concept gets genuinely uncomfortable. The travelers who encounter this thing aren't innocent bystanders. They're participants. Every mile you drive, you're contributing to the exact process that generates or summons the entity you're now face to face with. You are simultaneously the perpetrator and the victim. That duality is what makes this one hit different. Most Henderson creatures creatures are external threats, things that happen to you. The god of roadkill is something you helped create. It's ecological horror given a face, the invisible cost of human transportation infrastructure deciding it's tired of being invisible. Fan communities frequently interpret it as a consciousness born from accumulated suffering, a deity that didn't exist until we built enough highways to kill enough animals to give it a reason to, which is, not ideal. But if the god of roadkill punishes you for something you didn't even realize you were doing, the next entry punishes you for something far simpler: curiosity. The smile room. Every other creature on this list moves, it hunts, it stalks, it chases. The smile room doesn't need to do any of that, it just waits. The smile room is a Trevor Henderson creation, and it's not really a room at all. It's a massive mouth disguised as a door, a monstrous entrance lined with grinning human-like teeth that stretches wide open like it's inviting you inside, a gaping maw pretending to be architecture, which is, not ideal. Here's what makes this one genuinely disturbing. The victims are teenagers exploring an abandoned amusement park called Neb's Fun World, old enough to know better, but young enough to think urban exploration is a fun Friday night. A friend says, "Don't go in there," and the teenage brain hears, "Definitely go in there," and film it. The smile room exploits that wiring perfectly, but the real horror is the inversion. A smile is universally the most reassuring thing a human can see. It signals safety, friendliness, warmth. Every person learns this before they learn to walk. So the smile room takes the one visual cue every human associates with comfort and turns it into the entrance of a predator. The teeth don't comfort you, they surround you. Friendliness itself becomes the trap, and what happens inside isn't left to your imagination. Once you step through, a massive tongue-like appendage reaches out, grabs you, and pulls you in. It eats you. That's it. No transformation, no pocket dimension, no ambiguity. You walked into a giant mouth and it did exactly what giant mouths do. But if the smile room is horror through stillness, the next entry is horror through intrusion, and it shows up where you'd least expect it. Milk Walker Ambassador. Your home is the safest place on earth. Locked doors, alarm systems, maybe a dog that barks at everything. It's the one space where you're supposed to be untouchable. The Milk Walker Ambassador agrees with you completely. It just also lives there. This creature inhabits domestic spaces and eliminates anyone who violates the boundary of the human home. Burglars, trespassers, vagrants looking for shelter on a cold night. Some confused drunk who stumbled through the wrong door. If you cross the threshold without belonging there, the Milk Walker handles it permanently. Here's where it gets complicated though. The word ambassador implies diplomacy, protocols, rules. This thing isn't a mindless predator squatting in your kitchen. It operates according to some kind of established relationship with human habitation, like it was assigned there, which means something assigned it, something organized enough to have ambassadors in the first place. That's arguably worse than a monster. That's a bureaucracy. But the real debate in the community isn't about what the Milk Walker is. It's about whether it's actually scary, because a creature that exclusively kills home intruders occupies a genuinely weird moral gray zone. Is a monster that only targets burglars still a monster? Half the fanbase thinks it's horrifying, the other half wants one. The canonical evidence stays thin here, with most of what we know built on the core concept rather than detailed victim accounts. But the concept alone does enough heavy lifting to fuel the debate. The uncomfortable truth is that your home isn't safe because nothing dangerous is inside it. It's safe because something dangerous is inside it and you happen to be on its good side, for now. But a creature guarding one house is a curiosity. What happens when the threat is so large it doesn't fit inside anything at all? The behemoths, every creature we've covered so far has one thing in common. You can, at least in theory, do something about it. You can learn Siren Head's tricks. You can stay out of Cartoon Cat's territory. You can avoid the bridges, stay off the highways, keep your doors locked. The behemoths erase all of that. These are entities so incomprehensibly massive that their existence alone rewrites the rules of human civilization. There's no fighting them. There's no hiding from them. There's no government task force or military response that means anything when the threat is the size of a continent. Individual human action at this scale is like an ant filing a noise complaint against a hurricane. And here's the thing, the victims of the behemoths aren't the people who die. The victims are the people who survive. Think about that for a second. Every other creature on this list creates victims through predation, through hunting, through luring people into traps. The behemoths create victims by simply existing. They don't need to eat you. They don't need to notice you. The world just doesn't belong to humanity anymore. and you have to wake up every morning knowing that. Fans frequently interpret them as commentary on climate change, ecological collapse, planetary scale threats that make individual action feel completely meaningless. And honestly, that tracks, because the behemoths represent the logical endpoint of everything Trevor Henderson has been building toward. His horror was never really about monsters killing people. It was always about this, the systematic, total irrelevance of human agency when confronted with something operating at a scale you cannot comprehend, influence, or survive in any meaningful way. You're not prey, you're just irrelevant. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.